The Center for Disease Control estimates that more than 72,000 Americans died of drug overdoses last year. Now, think about it. That's a greater number than all the lives that were lost during the entire decade-long Vietnam War. A new investigative piece last night on 60 Minutes noted that while both the Trump and Obama administrations have sent hundreds of doctors to jail for their roles in the opioid crisis, so far, not one executive of an opioid manufacturer or distributor has been sentenced to a single day in jail. As the pharmaceutical industry comes under increased scrutiny, a lot of people are starting to wonder, as a Washington Post editorial board recently did, if Congress is doing enough to get at one of the root causes of this epidemic. With us now to talk about that and much more, someone who has devoted himself to calling attention to the opioid crisis, best-selling author and the host of America on CRTV, Eric Bolling. He's alongside Diana De La Garza. She is the mother of singer Demi Lovato, who called her own battle with addiction, quote, not something that disappears or fades with time. Also with us, back with us again, leading spine surgeon and founder of the online health newsletter Thrive, Dr. Dave Campbell. He's the author of The Teen Formula, A Parent's Guide to Helping Your Child Avoid Substance Abuse. I want to get to Diana and Eric in a minute, but first, Dr. Dave, I saw the 60 Minutes special last night, and even as a guy from Florida who knows Florida, I was blown away by the fact that something like 500 million opioid tablets came in to the state of Florida. The pharmaceutical companies flooded this state and guaranteed a healthcare epidemic.
Yeah, and this is now fortunately getting under control thanks to actions such as State Attorney Dave Ehrenberg and even the governor and some of the legislation over the last few years. Florida was the pill mill capital of the United States. It is not now.
Yeah. And Eric, I'm sure you saw the 60 Minutes special last night. And I mean, if you're a parent like yourself who has lost a child to this epidemic, and you see that pharmaceutical companies are flooding, 500 million pills coming into the state of Florida. That's happening all across the United States. Bad actors with an MD at the end of their name, basically being pill mills for Americans. It's unconscionable. What do we do, and what do you tell the president to do when you're talking to him?
Very, very good question, Joe. In fact, I did watch that, and I did see a doctor who had little or no remorse after prescribing at one point 1,000 opioid tablets to a pregnant woman. People were dying. So what's happening is, and what we're doing here is we're trying to create awareness. Yes, pharmaceuticals have been pumping opioid pills into doctors. What are doctors going to do? They're going to turn around and prescribe them. They're going to make sales. Doctors are at fault. Pharmaceuticals are at fault. But also, there's a lot of illegal opioids coming across the border that we've talked about. My son passed away after taking one pill. He was in college. He bought what he thought was a Xanax. It was laced with fentanyl, a Chinese knockoff, and it killed him that night. So it's multifaceted. And I think what's important, Joe, is that, you talk about Demi Lovato, you talk about the story. In the aftermath of Demi's, high-profile overdose, Diana De La Garza called me and said, look, I want to get involved in this. This is a scourge that's killing and hurting too many of our children. Well, how can I do this? And she said, as soon as Demi's out, as soon as Demi's safe and feeling okay, we're gonna team up. And that's what we did. I think the awareness that people have to understand. Here are two parents who, like any other parents in the world, love their kids, right? And things happen. And you have to be vigilant. You have to be aware. You have to have your discussions, and you have to create awareness. And that's what I wanted to bring Diana on, to create awareness to millions of people so that we can save some lives.
And Diana, it is an ongoing battle. Anyone with a loved one who has an addiction problem knows that it is for a lifetime. It is a fight that you battle 5 minutes at a time.
Yeah, and addiction is actually a disease. It's not a moral choice, like so many people may have been led to think. And so that's also something that, you know, I want to raise awareness and let people know that, you know, the addiction that is fueling the opioid crisis is something that needs to be looked at and, you know, provide ways for people to get help.
Joe,
I've had friends,
so the point,
I've had friends,
Joe,
Eric, that have had addiction problems, and it is, boy, I'll tell you what, Eric, it is sad. You realize it's a disease, and it's something that everybody around the loved one, they have to come together and be patient and try to help any way they can.
So, Joe, you were amazing when we lost our son. You called Adrian and I so many times. But here's the point that I think we're trying to see. You have two different situations. You're talking from an addiction at one point. You're talking from an accidental overdose on another situation. But here, we need to remove the stigma of addiction and overdosing and drug dependence. We need to make people aware that it can touch anyone. I can't tell you how many parents have said, I thought my son or my daughter was just too popular, too smart, too athletic, too white, too black, too gay, too straight, too whatever, but they were touched by it. Opioids and drugs are killing our youth. We need to remove the stigma, and I think that's the force. That's what we can do. Frankly, I'll be honest with you, Joe, I think Congress isn't doing enough. I think the White House can do more, and I've been pushing them to do more to remove the stigma. They're very good at enforcing. They're not very good at removing the stigma, and that's really important.
Well, and as long as the Justice Department, as long as Congress only focuses on doctors who are bad actors, Dr. Dave, instead of focusing on the pharmaceutical companies that are pumping pills into states, that are making a massive profit on it, we're not going to get to the root cause of this problem.
It's an evolving problem also, Joe. 2018, we're seeing a dramatic spike in the synthetic opioids coming from China up through Mexico, literally with postal services bringing in drugs. And the new Senate and House opioid bill does address that. So this is an evolving crisis that is much different today than it was in 2010. We've seen synthetic opioids now responsible for 30,000 deaths last year. That's dramatic. 72,000 total deaths, but 30,000 fentanyl and some of the fentanyl analogs.
So Joe, can I just jump in here very quickly? I sat down with Kirstjen Nielsen, the Homeland Security Secretary, and she addressed that. I said, what are you doing about the Postal Service? And she said there are literally tens of millions of dollars that are earmarked for upgrading how the Postal Service views packages that are coming through the U.S. postal system. Again, 3 grains of salt can kill a human being. It's really, really crazy that they need to work on that. So they're working on it, but they need to focus a lot more attention, a lot more resources, frankly.
Hey guys, it's Donnie. Danny, I am so sorry what you went through. And Eric, man, I haven't spoken in a long time. You're lost. I can't even fathom it, brother. I got a 15-year-old who's just going out in the world now, and we have these talks where I'll say things. The best I got is, I know you're going to experiment, everything in moderation. What's the playbook? Obviously, you've been digging deep into this. What do I say to my daughter? Because I know she's going to. The thing that happened to your son is could happen to anybody.
Donnie, I had that conversation with Eric Chase 100 times. 100 times. Just in moderation. Just be careful.
So that's my point. So give me a better playbook.
I got this, Dad. Here's your playbook. What's your son's name or your daughter's name?
London.
London. 1 pill can kill. Look at my story. My son bought 1 Xanax, sophomore in college, great kid, lots of friends, took 1. They need to understand that taking 1 pill from the wrong place can kill. Frankly, there's another kid at the University of Denver University, about 20 miles from the University of Colorado, 19-year-old, son of a military, a Navy, I think an admiral, died the same night. It was likely a bad batch of Xanax laced with fentanyl. 1 pill, you put it in your mouth, you don't know what's going to happen.
And that's the problem, Dave, Dr. Dave. This is you look at Diana's challenges. It has to do with addiction, something that we've all dealt with loved ones before. You look at what happened with Eric, and it was 1 pill. It's what I tell my kids after talking to Eric. 1 pill can kill. But for those on the addiction side of this, which is such a problem, there is hope. Talk about what's being done right now to help people get off of opioids.
Yeah, prevention falls both on the young people to prevent the naive kid who's never used opioids, very importantly, on the treatment and recovery side. So giving recovery support services and making sure everyone understands that this new batch of pills that may be used for fun are actually poison now, and they weren't 10 years ago.
And Narcan, you say, is...
the antidote is widely available. It needs to be made more widely available so that we can save lives, so that we can offer recovery support services to those valuable individuals that have just come on hard times.
All right, Eric, thank you so much as always. Come back. Diana, thank you. And Dr. Dave Campbell, the author of The Teen Formula, thank you as well. The Teen Formula is a critical resource for parents that are dealing with this difficult issue. Take a look at it. That does it for us this morning. We now turn it over to Stephanie Ruhle, who picks up the coverage. Stephanie.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.